So I'm interested in these dimensions of contemporary art, which somehow doesn't fit into this representational schema. Precisely, I would like to speak about two dimensions. The first is so-called unrepresentable dimension, and the second so-called imperceptible dimension. As you know, the discussion of the unrepresentable dimension of art has a long philosophical tradition. For example, Jacques Rancière, in his essay, Are Some Things Unrepresentable?, argues that some things, or for example, works of art, are subsumed under the categories of the unrepresentable, the unthinkable, or the imperceptible. And he refers to such different things as Moses' ban on representation, or the Kantian sublime, or the Freudian primal scene, Duchamp's grand verre, Malevich white square on white background, and finally Claude Lanzmann's film The Shoah. So by this notion of the unrepresentable, Rancière means several things. As he points out, the idea of the unrepresentable in fact conflates two distinct notions, impossibility and interdiction. So to declare that a given subject is unrepresentable by artistic means is in fact to say several things. It can mean that the specific means of art or of such and such an art are not adequate to represent a particular subject singularity. So that would be the impossibility of representation. But it also could mean the interdiction, which also may be twofold. The prohibition, however, also conflates two things: a prescription that bears on the event, and the prescription that bears on art. In this sense, the unrepresentable can mean either the restriction towards the represented subject, for example, restriction to represent certain events like Holocaust, or the restriction towards the means of representation. However, as Rancière points out, the unrepresentable art is not an art that no longer represents. As he says, quote, "It is an art whose choice of representable subject and means of representation is no longer limited." So in this sense, the discussion about the unrepresentable dimension in art leads us to the question of what mode of representation is appropriate to visualize some specific subject. Another question is what happens to the unrepresentable art when, or if at all, it enters the institutional field of art as representation. And could and should the unrepresentable art strive for recognition and institutional appropriation? So, having these questions in mind, I would like to discuss one specific artistic strategy, which, following Elizabeth Brosh, I will name as an aesthetics of imperceptibility. So, in contrast to the aesthetics of the unrepresentable, which is openly or secretly longing for the aesthetics of the sublime, becoming imperceptible has no teleological or theological center and is dispersed into continuous becoming. As Elizabeth Brosh argues, in contemporary theory and also in contemporary art practices, we have a twofold choice, quote, "Either we ascribe to a theory of the subject that strives to have its identity affirmed through relations with other subjects, a subject that seeks the recognition of others. Or we ascribe to a theory of the impersonal and ultimately to a politics of imperceptibility, the opposite of identity politics, a politics of act, not identities, in which inhuman forces that are both living and non-living are acknowledged and allowed to displace the centrality of will and consciousness." end quote. So this insight radically changes the nature of art, which has at its center the quest for racial, ethnic, or gender emancipation. Such an artwork which speaks on behalf of some subjugated minority should strive in this way not towards representation and recognition of identities, but towards so-called politics of imperceptibility. As Grosz points out, quote, politics can be seen as the struggle of imperceptible forces, forces in us and around, forces in continual conflict, end quote. So, as you can imagine, this position is harshly criticized by those theorists who think that every oppressed minority should strive for recognition and define the new identity through identification. However, this framework of identification has some structural problems because every identity needs the recognition and the acknowledgement of the other, be it other from small capital O or so-called big other, social order. In this sense, every player for recognition gets involved into the Hegelian master and slave dialectics. And my argument is that instead of waiting for the master's patronizing recognition or so-called tolerance, we should invent new concepts and strategies for contemporary art. And as I argued, one of these strategies could be the so-called aesthetics of imperceptibility, which is grounded not on identity and representational model, but on becoming as the interplay of forces. As Grosz argues, instead of longing for recognition of the master, quote, we could place an account of subjectivity at the mercy of forces, energies, processes, which produce an altogether different understanding of both politics and identity, end quote. Also, Grosz argues that subjects can be conceived as modes of action and passion, a surface catalytic of events, events which subjects do not control but participate in, which produce that history and thus what identity subjects may have. In place of a phenomenology of identificatory subservience, the political struggles of subjugated peoples can be regarded as struggles for practice, struggles at the level of pragmatics and rules. So the subject of force, which Grosz mentions, here means agency, which is both human and inhuman, quantitative and qualitative, active and passive. The Nietzschean forces are very close to what Deleuze and Guattari also named becoming. And as you know, they introduce many different becomings, including becoming woman, becoming animal, becoming imperceptible. So, although for Deleuze and Guattari all becoming begins and passes through becoming woman, it is only the first stage in the general process of becoming, which should strive towards becoming imperceptible. So this quest for imperceptible, indiscernible, and the impersonal imply the deconstruction of identity, or organism, signification, and subjectivity. So, following Deleuze and Guattari, we can presume that to become imperceptible means to disorganize the body as organism, dismantle the system of signification, and to erase the subject and subjectivity. Deleuze and Guattari argue that becoming imperceptible leads to the reduction of oneself, quote, to reduce oneself to an abstract line, a trait, in order to find one's zone of indiscernibility with other traits, and in this way enter the hexaity and the impersonality of the creator, end quote. So becoming imperceptible is the process of the dissolution of the subject into qualities, particularities, identities, and affects. So following from this, we can argue that the central concept in contemporary theory is not subject or individual, but the process of individuation, which connects and reconnects active and reacting, human and inhuman, physical and psychical forces. As Brosh points out, quote, it is no longer a subject that it takes before it a subject with whom to identify, or an object on which to enact its desire or will. Rather, forces act through subjects, objects, material and social worlds without distinction, producing relations of intensity and force. They constitute an inhuman subhuman field, a field of particles or elements of force, which are only provisionally or temporarily grouped together in the form of entities or actions. So this is why such theorists as Rosie Braidotti and Elizabeth Brosh argue for undoing racial, ethnic, or gender identity and striving towards becoming imperceptible. As they say, once a feminine identity is conceptualized, it should be replaced by another group. As Brosh points out, both the future feminine must render itself obsolete, or the object of profound and even inhuman or imperceptible becoming, rather than itself rest on the forms of femininity as they have been represented or idealized in sexual difference, within patriarchy as it has existed up to now, end quote. So instead of arguing for politics of recognition and visibility, which is the agenda of identity feminism, Brosh argues for the politics of imperceptibility, quote, instead of a politics of recognition, in which subjugated groups and minorities strive for a validated and affirmed place in public life, feminist and post-colonial politics should, I believe, now consider the affirmation of a politics of imperceptibility, leaving its traces and effects everywhere, but never being able to be identified with a person, a group, or organization. It is not a politics of visibility, of recognition, and of self-validation, but a process of self-marking that constitutes oneself in the very model of what which oppresses and opposes the subject. The imperceptible is that which the inhuman masters and which the human can sometimes liberate from its own orbit, but not control or name as its own, end quote. So now I would like to go to two examples which can be considered as instances of such an aesthetics of imperceptibility. So my first example is an audiovisual work by Colombian artist Clemencia Echeverri called Tremor. So I'll try to show the small thing. Unfortunately, so tremor comes from Greek trenos and means a funeral song, which refers to victims of a political catastrophe. So as an artwork, tremor is an audiovisual installation yeah, maybe we can see a small example. So it's an audiovisual installation in which two large screen projection screens are facing each other. So as you could see, the space between the screens is filled with images and sounds and silences and shadows. And the current of the river is growing until it fills one of the screens and then it fills the opposite screen. And thus the gallery space is filled with the sound of the current and along with the sound of frogs and crickets, and also with screams and voices that call out names of people that have disappeared. And finally, at the end, the river is colored in red, and as the only answer to the call, we see some uncanny details, for example, some clothes, which refers to the specters of the missing people. So the spectator of this work is put in the position in the middle of the river, in the middle of the current, which leaves him unable to identify with or to mourn the victim. So the artwork does not give any representation of violence, nor does it give any possibility of a testimony. Both victims and violators are missing, but the spectator is immersed into the sensation of drowning as the stream of the river is growing on the screen. As Gustavo Scirola Ospina argues, the artwork does not represent violence, but creates a scream which implies a combat between the forces of the body and those of death. A scream does not represent or signify, but creates a collective enunciation, a collective clamor, which constitutes political assemblage. As Ospina points out, both visually imperceptible forces become perceptible through the scream's sonority. The problem is still to catch the forces that produce the scream itself, to place the sound of the scream in a relationship with the forces of darkness. In this case, the scream does not answer to visible forces that may be exerted directly on one's own body. The scream calls for the other against its forced disappearance, against the production of corpses that the river makes invisible. The current of the river we see, both turbulent sound we hear, is perceived as a medium of invisibility, as a highway that we perceive in this way only through the scream and lamp and quote. So in this sense, the artwork is expressing its content not on the level of representation of spectacle, but on the level of material forces that affect and overwhelm the spectator. Another example I would like to discuss is an audiovisual work by Lithuanian artist Kristina Inčiūraitė. And it's a work called Nameless Hour, produced in 2014. This artwork contains very many different elements. Firstly, it relates to the 1948 crime drama called Sorry, Wrong Number, directed by Litvak. The film presents a female character played by Barbara Stanwyck, who is confined to her bed. A woman is imprisoned in her bedroom with no chance of escaping and is eventually killed. This situation of absolute passivity is contrasted with another film, the avant-garde film Hand Movie by Yvonne Reiner, produced in 1966, and in Hand Movie, the director herself, Yvonne Reiner, while being confined to a hospital bed while recovering from operation, performs a hand dance in front of the camera. In this sense, passive forces are transformed into active and creative action. And these cinematic influences create the background for the project protagonist, and they are members of basketball team of the Lithuanian LGBT community. But contrary to our expectations, the protagonists of this project are not striving for recognition or struggling for the rights or identities. Instead, we create a certain politics of imperceptibility, a certain collective sensitivity, which is conceptualized as a nameless hour, an hour as an extension of time in which transformation becomes possible. So the protagonists of this project try to collect their own negative experience by referring to certain locations and certain situations and smells, etc. And these collective experiences are visible in a film called Nameless. So here we see some stills from this film. So this film refers not to subjects or individuals, but to qualities, particularities, intensities in human and subhuman forces. In this sense, this politics of imperceptibility can be interpreted not as vanishing or disappearance, but actually as a medium for transformation. In this vein, the film Nameless is followed by other collective actions and gestures. For example, the helpless gesture of the female victim from the film Sorry, Wrong Number are repeated and also altered by the basketball players, which are trying to replay these gestures in the trajectories of basketball play. The sound of this basketball play is recorded in an audiovisual work called Barbara, which expresses the metamorphosis from passive and desperate gesture into a joyful action. The basketball players are also trying to repeat the gestures from Yvonne Reiner's film, in this way trying to extend and intensify their creative potential. So, to summarize, the politics of imperceptibility is not an escape from visibility or drive towards annihilation, but, let's say, a new conceptual strategy for contemporary theory and contemporary art. Becoming imperceptible opens the potential for new material forces, both human and inhuman, active and passive. Of course, some thinkers and artists might have reservations about this strategy, saying that becoming imperceptible leads to abandoning the struggles of subjugated groups, which they are running for recognition and visibility. But the crucial thing here is to detach oneself from the old logic of representation and identitarian thinking and move toward the flux of molecular becoming, which can engender bodily modification, political changes, and artistic innovations. So in this sense, becoming imperceptible can be seen as a practice of experimentation working on several levels. First, it is an attempt to abandon the identitarian forms, even if these forms refer to racial, sexual, or gender identities, and replace them with creating transformations. Second, it is an attempt to abandon the old forms of representation and open the space for collective sensations, for forces and gestures which have the power to recreate the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Audronė. So, again, very urgent questions. I have actually many questions, but I don't want to take your time. But one very short question. It's very interesting, this idea of abandoning representation altogether, and it's really popular now in the field. But I can imagine this happening in the arts. But what do you think about the politics? How it would work? Don't we lose certain political stance? For example, we can try to be imperceptible from minorities' point of view, but then the big other, the society, puts you into a certain position, like you or not. For example, like certain department regarding women philosophers as not real philosophers. You can think that you are not a woman philosopher, don't identify. But how do you think about what would be your comment?
I would say identitarian logic is an evil both in arts and both in politics, because it somehow forces you to stick to certain identity. And what's important, I think, is to create more and more connections between different, I wouldn't say minority groups, but different practices, different actions, and this is how it makes us to create something new. Otherwise, we're just repeating the same identity.
Thank you, and I'm sure there will be more questions for the discussion. And thank you, Audronė, once again. And I would like to invite